was recently watching this other YouTuber. Her name is Kim Bliss, and she sells basically handmade goods on Etsy. And in the video, she was basically critiquing a TikToker that was basically throwing shade at Etsy handmade sellers, kind of saying that they just don't want to grow legitimate businesses, they don't want to put in the effort, you know, all the things basically. And so her video was a response to that video. Well, a part of me wanted to take the side of the TikToker because I'm also a handmade seller, but when I come here on YouTube, I really am teaching from a place of how do I take this handmade business and turn it into something to such a dialed in operation that will take me into the later 6-figure or 7-figure a year mark. Even if that means it's in the comfort of your own home, that's possible, or your garage, right? So I did it in my grandma's spare bedroom. It is possible to achieve those heights, but to get into the later 6-7 figures, it's not possible just like on a whim, right? It actually requires strategy, higher level systems in place, maybe even a team that's going to help you get to that point. But as Kim continued to explain her reasoning, I was like, dang, she's right. Sometimes I think I forget that every business owner has their own goals, and I'm always going to teach from a place that aligns with my own business goals. But not everyone has the same business goals as me. At this point, I've talked to hundreds of sellers, and there's a big chunk of people that legitimately are just doing it as a side hustle because they actually love their corporate job, or they're retired and they just, you know, like to make a couple sales a day because it's just fun for them. And all of that just to say is that I'm only a singular data sample of someone sharing my experience based off my goals. And it's important to keep that in mind as you're consuming free content because, you know, one particular person's experience could be completely different from another person's experience. Every single seller on here has value to give. You have Cassie Johnson and Heather Studio that kill it teaching in the print-on-demand space. You have Ryan Hogue, who is the master of automation. You have people like Star Lamore and Dave from Add to Cart who have been on YouTube before I was even on YouTube, that have just been in Etsy for so long and have learned so much about the platform. They just have a lot of value to give, right? In summary, the reason I just preference that whole bit to this point now is because the title of this video is how to get ahead in your Etsy business, right? So I'm talking from a place of what my personal goals are for my own Etsy business and my e-commerce brands, right? Which my personal goals and the place that I'm teaching from, which is what? How to set my business up to be successful 5 years from now, right? What sacrifices, what things do I need to do today that I'm going to reap the benefits of and continually reap the benefits of to have a legitimate business for many years to come. Number 2 is how to play the game of Etsy in the way that Etsy wants you to play the game, right? So every third-party selling platform has an algorithm. That algorithm has a cryptic set of rules, and it's our job to try to dissect those cryptic set of rules, which makes it not that fun when the people at the top don't even know their own rules. But for the most part, we have a somewhat of a blueprint of how we can see that Etsy wants us to play this game. So how do we play the game of Etsy and play it to the best of our ability? Number 3 is how do we build such a dialed in Etsy business engine that we have the opportunity to remove ourselves from the parts of our business pie chart or our business engine that we don't want to do, right? I've never worked in a corporate background. I've never worked a corporate job, a real job ever. I've only been an entrepreneur. I mean, I bartended, but that's about it. But historically, when you work a corporate job, you don't really have this opportunity to just assume any role and do any job that you want. Normally, you're assigned a role. As an entrepreneur, as a CEO, we have a unique opportunity, if you set your business up properly, be able to position yourself in only the role of which you enjoy doing. So if you just like doing research and development, then you can get your business systemized to a point where that's your only job. If you just like doing photography, then you could just do photography. Maybe you are somebody that loves only inventory management and quality control, right? And that could be your only job, right? If you get your business to that point. So in order to get your business to that point, there has to be SOPs, standard operating procedures, and systems in place. And this leads me to the last key thing that we optimize for. How do we optimize our business engine for profit instead of revenue? And again, let that guide us for our next best decisions to make in our business. So hopefully by the end of this video, with those 4 key talking points that we're going to dive into right now, this is going to allow you to get a grip on your business and get ahead based off of my personal goals for my own business. All right, so let's get into number 1. so what do we know about the future of where all this may or may not be heading? Well, we know that as time goes on, competition is going to continue to arise. And I think one of the common themes, not just on Etsy, but wherever you're selling or launching a brand, something that's not going to go away anytime soon, actually it's probably going to get way more intense, is learning how to story tell, right? And you can do this even in Etsy. So storytelling comes down to the brand vibe that you create, the colors that you choose, the photography, this type of photography that you do, the type of videos you do, the types of graphics you put in your images, right? And telling the story of why someone should purchase it from you versus some Chinese reseller down the street. And this is a big thing that I even get in my YouTube comments, which is like, how do I compete against a bunch of people just reselling things from China? Well, I'm going to tell you how you're going to compete. You're going to actually have a brand meaningful story behind what you're selling. So if you're hand making leather wallets, tell that story of how you're hand making leather wallets, right? Show that video of you actually making and cutting the leather and put that in your imagery, in your videography, in your descriptions, but more so in your videography and your imagery, right? Tell me that story, make that connection, right? That's a price justification within itself if you're competing against a bunch of people selling the same thing at a cheaper price point because they're not actually hand making it, right? You have 10 image slots and you have video slots, right? And in each of those image slots, you have the opportunity to not only put an image, but all of those value propositions that tell the story about how you hand make, where you source from, how long it takes you to make your product, why your quality is better, where you source your raw materials from, and why it's better than just going to a reseller, right? All of that information that exists in your descriptions, tell me that story in your images, right? There's a lot of ways that you can manipulate your imagery so you are basically forcing people to read and see all of those value propositions that no one's going to read in your descriptions. So doing the storytelling in your listings alone is one thing, but I'm going to take this even a step further. When it comes to the actual brand vibe of your store creation, I believe that it's going to become very important, and the algorithm likes this, for your entire Etsy shop to be a cohesive brand vibe. So the way that I like to describe this is like when you walk into a store like Victoria's Secret versus a store like Nike, right? Even though Victoria's Secret is selling underwear, they're selling bathing suits, they're selling pajamas, they're selling socks, they're selling a whole bunch of different types of items, but it's a very unique and identifiable brand vibe when you walk in the store, the way it smells, the colors on the wall, the images, right? And when you put all of those accents together and you put them together, it makes sense. Where on the contrary, if you walk into Nike, it's a completely different brand vibe. Again, they're selling shoes, they're selling backpacks, they're selling socks, they're selling so many different types of goods. So you can sell many different types of items in your shop, but when you put all those items together and the colors and the textures, right, it makes sense. And so when you're thinking about setting up your Etsy brand, think about building a cohesive brand that's even maybe recognizable off the Etsy platform. So then one day, if this manifests into driving traffic to your own Shopify store or a social media account or something like that, you already have that part of your business taken care of. You have an identifiable brand vibe where it's recognizable just by the name, right? They can visually see, oh, those are the colors of that brand. Oh, those are the types of products they're selling. And when you do this, your particular brand vibe that you create attracts a particular customer avatar. So two people in the print on demand space selling the same type of goods, that is, shirts and stuff like that, a gothic branded print on demand store versus a girly hippie boho sweatshirt store, even though they might both be selling sweatshirts, it's attracting a completely different customer avatar. So really, really get narrow in the sense of who do you actually want to attract as your customer avatar, and let all of your marketing, your colors, your fonts, your logos, right? Let that speak to that particular person. All right, so now I'm shooting in my living room. If you've noticed, we are changing it up because I'm in the middle of moving and I don't really have an office right now. So we're just kind of going wherever and shooting videos. Okay, so the next part of this is learning how to play the game of Etsy and playing the game to your very best ability. So it's kind of like playing Monopoly. There's strategy involved, but it's specific to, the deck of cards that you hand at play or what you can play, right? And so it's kind of similar that even though everyone has a bunch of different businesses, we're collectively trying to win at the same game with the needs, wants, fears, and goals of our unique position, our business, right? So what does Etsy want as you as a seller? Well, one, They are also business, actually a very big business. So if you're making money, then they're making money. So they want you to have the highest average order value, right? If you're competing in a niche selling leather bags, right? Compared to all of the leather bags, are they going to prioritize listings that have a $40 average order value, or are they going to prioritize your listing that maybe has a $75 average order value, right? So how do we optimize to increase AOV? We have more expensive things to sell, right? If you're currently selling at a lower middle tier ticket, consider launching things that are more expensive. There's always this percentage of people that are always going to buy the most expensive thing. So if you're selling small leather handbags, maybe launch a medium or a large size handbag, right? And that's double or triple the price, right? This overall helps your status in the eyes of Etsy. Similarly, if you're someone selling only high ticket items, maybe consider selling lower ticket items as well. So your store has a mix of lower ticket and getting a higher quantity of people buying, but then you also have someone also purchasing on the highest tiered thing. This is going to increase your revenue when you have an upsell and a downsell on your items. Another thing is who's winning the majority of the clicks. When your listing is showing up in the search pages, whether you know it or not, you're competing for that click compared to everyone else that has similar items as you or similar keywords as you, right? So out of all of the listings that show up, the algorithm is judging based off who's earning most of the clicks. This is why I'm really big on split testing. So much about Etsy success is not just about your main image, obviously, because having poor branding in your listings can actually scare away people and hurt you in the long run, but that main image is so important. And so it's in your best interest to not just limit you to one data sample of an image when you go to launch your product. When we launch a listing, we're launching 2 to 5 renditions of that same product, whether it's bundled in different bundles, whether we're split testing the main image, and we're always competing against our last best CTRs. So if we launched a product and it had a 1.2 CTR, we're gonna run it again against another image to see if we can get it to 1.5 CTR. CTR stands for click-through rate. And this is how you're competing always against your last best metric. And where do I get this CTR from? I get the CTR from my ads when I'm running ads on my listings, which we're going to talk about that one in a second. But basically, once you've gotten a couple hundred clicks on a listing, you collected a good amount of data to make a conclusion on that CTR, right? After you've had significant amount of data run through that product, right? You can say, okay, 1.2, we're trailing a 1.2. How do we get this to a 1.5? Another thing that Etsy is always going to reward sellers for is constantly updating their product sample with quality products. So we have a system where we launch 10 new products every month. We have a consistent engine that has an inflow of new designs happening, right? Now, those 10 items might yield 30 or 40 new listings every single month that we're testing out based off of how we bundle it, how we stage it, how we split test the main image. But we have a consistent inflow system of new products happening on a recurring basis, right? So we've built out that side of our engine, that we've SOP'd out our research and development process to the point that every single time we want to launch something new, there is a system of how we get the raw materials, how we set up the SKU, how do we set up the tracking for it, and basically track every single thing that gets input so we can filter out bestsellers out of all the new input. And out of every 40 new listings that we have, maybe only 3 to 5, 6, or 7 become bestsellers that take off. That's a normal occurrence, but it's kind of like this filtration system. The more you put things into the algorithm, run ads, collect data, the faster you can pull out the best case scenarios and focus on those money-making ones to then optimize for more growth. It's like this filtration engine sort of thing, which leads me to another point here, which is spending on Etsy ads. So Etsy ads is not a game of let me just spend money and waste money, right? It's about how to spend with more profitability. Otherwise, what are we doing, right? Why am I teaching Etsy ads if it's just like wasting your money, right? The goal isn't just to increase your revenue. The goal is to increase your profit. And if you're somebody that's struggling with Etsy ads and basically isn't seeing that the higher spend or spending isn't yielding a bigger return, in my experience, again, this is my experience from all of my clients, 99.9% of the time, the reason the seller can't get the ads to work for them, it's usually a product of a user error, meaning the seller's issue. There's some other issue causing their ads not to work, whether product sample isn't competitive enough, and they're not getting clicks, or their value proposition or their marketing efforts or their photography or their designs aren't competitive enough. But for the most part, in the best case scenario for your Etsy shop for the future is to have your ads to the max, yielding the max profitability possible, max potential possible, right? And this is gonna make you be more profitable, not just increase your revenue if you're doing it correctly. It's a really big if you're doing it correctly. But when it comes to ads, we have to think of what does the platform want, right? They don't only want you to have the highest AOV, the most clicks, the best conversion rates, right? They don't want just all of that, but on some level, when a platform says, hey, give me money in exchange for traffic, they are judging you on how much you're spending. And that's gonna contribute to how competitive you are in the future when competition arises. Because even if you're not spending right now, 5 years from now, you might have a lot of competitors putting their hand up saying that they're actually willing to outbid you in positions. And if you look at any top selling product across any platform, Amazon, Wayfair, Faire, eBay, whatever you want to call it, I can promise you any viral product has ad money behind it. It maybe starts organically, but then to hold that position, you have to lock in that position by spending money in the long term. But again, this is if you're coming from my perspective of being ultra competitive, and that's a super aggressive approach. And if that's not what your goals are, you're allowed to have your own goals. You're your own boss. That's why you chose this. All right, now let's talk about number 3, which is building a super strong business engine, which is kind of what we talked about before, which is building SOPs around every single thing that we do. SOP stands for standard operating procedure. And it's things like customer service, research and development, inventory management, quality control, PPC, pay-per-click with Etsy ads, how you manage your Etsy ads, right? And obviously, if you're first starting out for the first time, building SOPs are not your biggest issue by any means, but it's not something to overlook either. If your business is this wheel here, you have all these different compartments of your business, right? And when you work on your business, by the very nature, you just are wearing all of the hats. You're doing everything. But eventually, if you want to elevate and delegate, as cheesy as that sounded, eventually you want to build out processes for each part of the business. So for customer service, after you've answered 1,000 of your own customer service messages, you have a pretty good grasp on your customers' needs, wants, fears, and goals, and how you deal with your customer service. So you can build an SOP document out, basically a sheet out that says, if the customer has a complaint about this, this is what we do. If the shipment got lost in the mail, this is the procedure that we follow, right? And we start building processes around every single thing that we do. So for us, right, we order raw materials. We have a process of what we do when we order raw materials. We have a document that says we ordered it on this date, we bought it from this source, we spent this much money, it's going to yield this many products after we turn it into a product, right? All of those things. So in our case, say we're launching a new design, right? We buy hundreds of thousands of yards of fabric every single year, right? And that fabric might have a design on it, right? And that design is going to yield a new product for us to offer, right? So we have a process of ordering and documenting where the material came from, how much we bought, after we break down that raw material, how much the cost is per unit. And we document this on a sheet. And then once it gets into our office and we start turning it into a prototype, then we can say that this design has this code associated to it, which then that gets pushed into our SKU system. So then we can create a SKU for each size of the design that we make. So then if we launch 12 different sizes of that new design that came in, we have 12 unique SKU codes that just came in. And then we know that we're going to go load those SKUs into a draft listing, which then triggers the marketing department to then first to coordinate to get the raw material turned into the finished usable product, right? And then the marketing team, which is the same person, then goes and does a photo shoot. And that photo shoot then is finished. And those photos are put back into the draft prepped listing. And then the same person that ordered it, who is also doing research and development for the design, will go in and optimize the keywords and finish off the listing and publish the listing. And this is a process that is pretty dialed in for our company, from inception of the idea of the new design based off research to then getting the final product uploaded into Etsy and then making it a trackable item with a SKU code. Now, this is our complex system, right? And we have a complex product. So this is how I know that it's possible for even the most complex items that you're selling. And again, not everybody wants to go to these lengths to figure out and optimize processes. I particularly like it because if I don't have these systems, then I can't replace myself with someone else doing all these things on my behalf. And that is the point of systems, is that it's a repeatable, scalable system, so that even if you're gone or you're sick, someone else can take your place and follow those systems. And like I said, this isn't the most pressing issue when you're first launching your business. The most pressing issue when you're first launching is getting product market fit. Do people want what you have to sell? But once you've made 50 to 100 sales and you're gaining some momentum, right? At that point, you've kind of gotten a proof of concept that people like what you have to sell. And now we can start dialing this up and, following what the profit tells us, which leads me to number 4. All right. And finally, the last thing that we have to talk about is letting profit be your guide. So it's really common for Etsy sellers to get caught up in something called vanity metrics. These are feel-good metrics like revenue and likes and favorites that feel really good and feels like you're succeeding. Not that you're not, but like they don't actually tell you anything about your business. And when it comes to having a North Star or something to guide you on your decisions, the only thing that actually matters in e-commerce is profit. So back in however long ago it was, I posted this video about me making $945,000 my first calendar year on Etsy, right? That video got literally over 1 million views. But then when I later posted my net profit on that amount, it got not so 1 million views. People like the feel good, make $1 million vibe. They don't want to know the real truth about their business, but understanding and getting comfortable and having an honest relationship with your business metrics is what real true success, that's how true success manifests, when you get uncomfortable with the uncomfortable of knowing the truth about your store. Okay. So how do we do this? I went on this 2-year journey of trying to solve this problem for Etsy sellers. And basically I built a tool called ProfitTree, and it's the first ever real-time profit tracking solution for sellers. And essentially what you can do with this is you can input all of your product costs on a per product level, so you can see not only your profit on your store level, but you can actually see it on each unique item that you sell. So remember that situation that we talked about where I particularly love to split test everything. So if I'm selling this unique item across 17 other listings, which I would, right? I can see a consolidated report on how this unique item is selling across multiple listings. Or just in general, like on a listing level, right? You might have a best-selling listing, but you see in that best-selling listing that actually only one option is making 90% of your revenue, right? But that one option isn't what's being marketed in the main image, or those keywords aren't what's being seen first in the beginning of the title, right? And so this is where you let profit make your decisions for you, right? And the truth of it, I've seen people where they're like, this is my best-selling product, this is my best-selling product, but then they look at the profit and it's actually like their 7th product is actually the one that's they should really be giving the most love to and optimizing, because that's the one that's making them the most of the dough, if you know. So overall, ProfitTree is going to solve this problem for you. It's going to give you an honest relationship with your business. And again, if you're first starting out, this is not the main issue for you right now. The main issue is getting market fit, product fit. Do people even want what you have to sell? But it's not good to overlook these concepts or to ignore them, right? And looking back, I spent a lot of my time investing my time in things that I felt like doing instead of what I actually should have been focused on. You only have so many hours in the day to do stuff for your business, right? Especially in the beginning when you're one person, right? So it's the best for you to invest your time in things that you'll do the greatest return, right? And you just don't want to be working at random, because like I said, your time is the most valuable thing in your given workday. And I definitely just did things at random and did what I felt like doing instead of what I should have been doing looking back. But overall, guys, I have full ads trainings in my channel. You guys can check out ProfitTree.io. There's a link in the description and there's a free trial. So even if you hate it, just give me some feedback, because at this stage, that's all we're really looking for, is to get feedback from you guys, see what you like, what your problems are, tell me everything, blow up that chatbot, tell me what you need so we can find a solution for it. All right, guys, thank you so much for staying to the end, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye, guys.